Hi guys, how are you all? This is FJ What If? Today we are going to discuss about what if Naruto was Madara's student part 2. Before start the episode, please like and subscribe my channel. Chapter 2, Heart of Fire. She was crushed. Why? The boy that had apparently loved her was dead. It hadn't been a month since a certain blonde ball of energy passed on. She wasn't the only one suffering, Hinata was too. She had a crush on the idiot, but she never had the courage to tell him. Now she had lost her chance as well. She was so useless. If only she may have been stronger, she could have been there to help Naruto. But no, she was busy fawning over someone that hated her. She was so blind to the obvious truth that the orange-loving kid with the ocean eyes saw her as the center of the world. But now he was gone, and it seemed the village just felt empty, devoid of emotion. A dark gray had cast itself over the village, leaving all the color behind in favor of the dull, lifeless color. The sun seemed to shine less brightly over the buildings and people, and its light was no longer warm and soothing to the touch, and it wasn't cold either, it was just in between. She missed the warmth she would feel every day, but the warmth she received when around him was almost like standing next to a sun. She never got that feeling when around Sasuke, to be precise. All he was, is and will be, cold like the moon. The sun had lost its warmth and the wind was cold. It now rained more often ever since he died, and it was supposed to be called the Land of Fire, not Land of Sad Rain. Now she knew how Omigakure felt. But why did it rain more often than it ever has? Was the sky weeping and crying over the death of a person whose personality was almost skin to that of the sky, joyous and carefree, freedom unbound? All that space and to do everything you could to the best of their ability, he was like that. Uninhibited by the rules and laws of the world, making only rules for himself and only himself. No one would yell at him, he would get away with everything. Sakura sometimes felt like he was always so lucky to not have parents to yell at you or punish you. But did she really think like that? What if she would spend a week in Naruto's shoes and maybe she would understand how he would feel? There was a saying that she sometimes heard in the village: you can't truly understand someone until you walk a mile in their shoes. That statement rang true indeed. The village seemed to return to the status quo, but sometimes wounds took a lot longer to heal than others. Everyone had seemed to forgotten the blonde, but Sakura could see that they still had scars. It seemed like they hated the blonde for an as of yet unknown reason that the pink cat couldn't fathom. She always wondered why, but she felt that by discovering the secret would cost her more than it's worth. There was one person she would see every day. Someone hat was closer to Naruto than she was, Konohamaru. After the orange-loving boy's death, she would check up on the Sarutobi heir to see if he was trying to undo the pain in his heart, but she would be rejected and dejected every time when he would say I'm fine, thus training, so she just left him on his own so he could cope with loss himself. But the one statement that panged her chest was he will continue his legacy. That sentence seemed to spark something within her. It felt like there was an opportunity around the corner, but it was nagging at her mind. What was she supposed to do? The potential to be something great in his eyes. So he could look down and be proud of her and her accomplishments. That was something she wanted more than anything. She had sometimes dreamed of ending herself and going up to join him in the other life. But would that truly solve anything? The blonde spent every waking moment he could to make the village a better place. He gave away his money to orphans, the poor and the downtrodden, obviously understanding how they felt. That was one thing she loved about him, his selflessness. He would do just about anything, just about anybody. He was like that, always helping people, no matter if they were friend or foe. Although he was always loud and exuberant, that was always something that made her giggle. She remembered when her team did the tree climbing exercise. Apparently she had near perfect chakra control. Wasn't there something that involved great chakra control? She couldn't remember, but she was sure it would come to her. Tsunade Senju was sitting behind her desk doing what she dreaded most. Paperwork, filing missions, approving D ranks. Stuff that didn't even matter. How she would give for a certain rambunctious blonde to call her Bachan, despite how she hated that nickname, and yet she let him call her that. Like everyone who knew the sun-kissed blonde, she too was hurting on the inside. It was like a horrid feeling wrenching inside her that refused to leave, like a parasite. She loved the orange lover as if he was her own son. She had finally found a precious person that she could bestow her necklace upon, but its curse had acted again, had taken the boy away from her. She believed the stories, that in fact the stories were true, that the cursed necklace would only accept her as a bearer. She should have done more for him, possibly given him better living conditions or gave him more money, so he could live. Apparently, Naruto had gathered up quite a bit of money thanks to all the missions he would do. But she heard that he rarely spent it and he only brought things he needed. But there were other things he needed, such as friends, family and love. He spent his money on others' needs that he didn't focus on his own. He had plenty of money. And he rarely met up with his friends, that he never really formed bonds with them, or his friends just thought he was a nuisance and idiot and avoided him like all the others. He could have gotten better clothing than that jumpsuit, she thought. Naruto, whenever he had gotten any money, after becoming a shinobi, he gave it away to orphans and the orphanage. But after he died, the orphans stopped getting any funds. Even the matron that run the place came in and told her about it, though when she asked she always said, it was signed as anonymous. That boy. Heart of gold indeed. That knucklehead was nothing but a kind of spirit, filled with nothing but everything positive, and he was the purest soul you could meet. She believed that he would earn the acknowledgement of the village someday, but now, today or any other day. She turned her head to the left and picked up a picture. It was her and the sun-kissed blonde, on the road back to Konoha where she would become Hokage. In the picture she was hugging him and they were both smiling wildly. He really was like a son to him, but now he was gone. Thanks to the Uchiha, she issued a capture-on-sight order. If her ninja ever saw him, she wouldn't kill him. That's not what he would want. Plus the civilian council and the elders pulled some strings and passed her judgment, because they needed the Sharingan. What a load of bull. She thought angrily. The Sharingan was an asset the counselors believed was vital to the power of Konoha. They also claimed since the Sharingan could control the tailed beasts that they don't even need the Kyuubi. But there has never been an Uchiha that could fully control the power of a Biju since Madara Uchiha, so therefore it was unlikely. Tsunade was brought out of her musings when she heard a knock at the door. Wondering who it was since she sent Shizune on an errand that needed to be done, she ushered the person in. To her surprise, it was Sakura Haruno, Naruto's teammate. Now she was confused. What does she want? When Tsunade first laid her brown, honey eyes on the pinkette, the very first thought that came to mind was fangirl. That thought was even furthered when she saw Sakura embrace Sasuke as if her life depended on it. She also saw the pained expression Naruto had when she hugged Sasuke, that spoiled brat. Tsunade had met and seen many fangirls in her long life, and all were obsessed with their love interests, looks, talent and coolness, most of which didn't matter, and most times the catcher of their eyes weren't interested in them. So basically they were chasing after mirrors. Sakura was no different. She was probably the biggest fangirl the girl had ever seen. And there wasn't anything special aside for Sasuke other than he was an Uchiha. If he had the Mangekyo Sharingan, then he was worth something. Her thoughts were broken when the pink-haired girl's voice broke the silence like a stick. Tsunade-sama. I wish to speak with you, she said. The busty blonde-haired woman could tell that she was nervous. For one, their eyes hadn't connected, and two, the girl's body language was screaming guilt. She hadn't really met Sakura aside from seeing her the few times around the village and seeing her with Naruto. But still she would listen to the girl. Tsunade fell into her stalwart Hokage demeanor, where she had a stoic face and judging eyes. Do you require something, Sakura? She asked in a way that only a leader can speak with. Tsunade-sama, I ask of you to take me on as your apprentice, pronounced Sakura. Sakura's heart was beating hard and fast. It took all her courage just to stand in front of the woman. Why did she agree to this? Why did she come before the Hokage, the leader of her village? Her courage was leaking from her like water through a crack. She felt like she was going to shatter at any moment, like broken glass. Even walking into her office felt like she was stepping on needles. But she had something to prove, something to make everyone proud of her, to make him proud of her. She wanted to stand tall as a kunoichi, a strong, confident one, which was not at the moment. Tsunade was genuinely surprised. She never expected this question to come from her. But still, why? She understood the request easily, but there must have been an ulterior motive behind it. But why herself? There were plenty of other tutors in Konoha, even Kureno would be acceptable. But training directly from the Godame Hokage herself, the strongest woman in the world. This was no coincidence, and why did she get the feeling that it was connected to a certain someone? Shizune, shouted Tsunade in a commanding tone. Her assistant apprentice came running through the door carrying several stacks of paperwork to which she was sent out for, and had just returned, and somehow Tsunade knew she was there. Yes, Tsunade-sama? She asked. Whenever her mazer used this tone of voice, she was always a bit peeved. Please bring me the file on Sakura Haruno, she ordered, still in her stalwart phase. Shizune nodded and quickly left the room for the file. The two kunoichi left in the room were quiet like the grave. Tsunade intertwined her fingers and placed her hands in front of her face. She was studying the girl in front of her. The first thought that came to mind was fangirl, the bane of all true kunoichis. It was because of ninja like this that gave the word kunoichi a bad name, and that's why they were never taken seriously. Not only that her figure was too skinny, and there was barely any muscle on her, was she dieting? The pink cat needed to get rid of that because, in battle, it would sap her energy and make her a slow, easy target, and if she didn't build muscle, then how was she going to defend herself from enemies? Without a healthy body, the shinobi or kunoichi won't be much use whether or not they have strong ninjutsu and chakra. Sakura was being scrutinized before Tsunade. She didn't know her thoughts or feelings, but she knew that they weren't good because of the look that she was giving her. She couldn't back down. Now she had something to prove, and if she broke down in front of Tsunade, then nothing will be achieved. Shizune returned to the Hokage's office with the folder in hand and then gave it to her master. Tsunade ordered her to leave, for what was about to transpire must be done privately. Tsunade examined the folder before opening it. On the page there was a picture of Sakura after she had recently become a genin. She scanned every page, every word that was within the file, every little detail. She scanned the folder. Tsunade snapped the folder shut and turned her gaze back on the girl in front of her. Sakura Haruno. Your file says some things that are truly dissatisfactory, were the words that Tsunade used. Sakura was hurt, but she knew it was true. If she denied it, she would only be a fool. It says, doesn't take shinobi skills and training seriously. Too obsessed with personal affections that get in the way of teamwork and concentration. Spoke Tsunade blankly. It also has reports on your missions and Chunin exam, preliminary battle with Ino Yamanaka. In your mission reports, mainly your first C rank, turned A- rank, it explains in detail about how over-reliance on teammates when faced with a superior adversary, clouded judgment, and stayed behind the scenes without participating once in team action to save their sensei who was trapped. Then there's the report on your prelim match with Ino Yamanaka. Chosen words are pathetic. By Kurena Yui. Barely has mastery of the basic academy jutsu and showed no other skills other than below average taijutsu, says Asuma Sarutobi, and disgrace to all kunoichi, says Anko Mitarashi, and who let her in the academy, says Ibiki Marino. Sakura's confidence was breaking fast. Everything she said was right and she can't dispute that. But this is not important, spoke Tsunade as she finished reciting the report. Why do you wish to become my apprentice, Sakura? That was the question Tsunade wanted to know the most. Because I wish to be a strong kunoichi and serve the Lee village and become an admirable medic nin, spoke Sakura with false confidence. No, was what Sakura heard. She looked up and saw Tsunade looking at her sympathetically. Sakura, tell me the truth, why do you want to become my apprentice? Queried Tsunade. Sakura gasped at the answer. The Hokage knew she was lying, but she just wants to know the real reason why. I want to become stronger. I want to learn medical ninjutsu so I can save people. People die, I know that, but doesn't mean we can't give them the chance to live. I don't want people like Naruto to die. She started freely sobbing. I want to become strong to make him proud of me. I want my life to have a purpose. I don't want Naruto's death to be for nothing. I want his will to carry on through me and all the others. So please take me on as your apprentice, pleaded the pink-haired genin. Tsunade expected that answer, but still seeing Sakura break down in before her was almost a mirror image of the time Dan and Nawaki were killed. During the Second Shinobi World War, those two were her life, and when she lost them, a piece of herself followed after. Very well, Sakura Haruno. You are now my apprentice. We will start tomorrow, but don't expect me to go easy on you. My training will be hard and rigorous, spoke Tsunade seriously. Sakura steeled herself and faced her new teacher. Yes, Tsunade-sensei, I won't fail you. And with that said, a new promise was made to a blonde-haired boy. Somewhere dark and cold was an old man sitting on a wooden throne, a kusarigama in hand that substituted as his cane. This man was Madara Uchiha, and he was watching his only student Naruto Uzumaki going through physical torture. Technically it was a physical workout. It was a week ago when Naruto's rehabilitation finished and his muscles and internal organs started working properly. The first thing he started on was Naruto's physical muscle. When Naruto first started, he had a lot of baby fat and not much muscle, which was something that needed rectified and quickly. Madara knew that the blonde needed to be in peak fighting condition where he one day shatter stone with one of his punches. So he forced Naruto into his training by doing 1,000 push-ups, 1,000 sit-ups, 1,000 squats and 2 hours of non-stop running. To Naruto, Madara was a slave driver. But the blonde never complained. After Naruto had woken up, Zetsu brought him some new clothes after his old ones were destroyed by his new sensei. His new attire consisted of a leather vest, ambu-style pants, fingerless leather gloves and a pair of black ninja sandals. When questioned how Zetsu got them, it didn't answer, but the white half did. It explained that the big flower was growing even more white, Zetsu's, and that the artificial humans can turn into other people, and they bought the clothes with fake money. So that was how Zetsu got the clothes. No more questions were asked. Surprisingly, Madara had a quaint knowledge of Fuinjutsu. He immediately created gravity seals designed for Naruto to increase his speed, strength and physical mass. And it was a great plan. Already Madara was able to see the results of the tour training he had Naruto undergo. There was the faint buildup of muscle where the body parts that Naruto targeted, someday that muscles would become hard as wood. Over the week Madara had gotten to know the hyperactive blonde, and he was intriguing. Even after dropping the psychological mask, Naruto still held on to some of his tendencies. He had a peculiar obsession for ramen, calling it the food of the gods. He still liked the color orange despite the verbal beating he got from Madara saying that orange was a stupid and useless color, to which the two argued for hours on end saying whether or not orange was, or was not, a stupid color, but Naruto sported a small smile afterwards. But now Naruto was a quiet and reserved individual. He never complained, well, not to Madara anyway, and he smiled less. And it seemed like Naruto was really bitter towards the people of Konoha, which was what the old Uchiha wanted. A great change to Naruto now was that he was a perfectionist that didn't stop until he fully mastered what he was learning, which reminded Madara of himself. But the most amazing thing about his student was that he had untapped potential lying within him, as if a great flood was being held back by a wall made of sticks. You didn't need the Sharingan to see it. Even without the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, it was there. He was pleased that Zetsu brought him the boy. He now had a powerful weapon to carry on his legacy and will and complete what he had been planning for years. But one thing he did take offense to was the quality of the shinobi of the current age, where the elites were unable to capture a blonde-haired boy wearing a bright orange jumpsuit in the middle of the day. But now he was pondering whether or not to start teaching Naruto elemental manipulation, but to do that he would need to discover Naruto's chakra nature. For if he was going to use the boy, he was going to make him as strong as possible, because he was now unable to do much. In a way, Naruto reminded Madara of his younger brother Izuna. In more ways than one. They shared the same determination and quiet nature, and were similar when it came to fighting, focused and quick thinking. But one thing about the blonde that surprised Madara was Naruto's deceptive nature. The boy was cunning and tricky. Madara likened him to a fox, ironic considering he was a container for massive orange fox with 9 tails. Maybe that's where he got his love for orange. But this talent would certainly be a boon in the future. Madara never knew what Naruto was scheming. It was well hidden by a wall of words, but Madara had a feeling that Naruto was planning something. And speaking of the fox, it seemed that Naruto was able to retain his incredible healing ability. Now he could use the shadow clone jutsu to full effect without any negative drawbacks. The future, thought Madara. The ancient Uchiha knew he didn't have much time left, even while connected to the statue that was keeping him alive. He had about 3.5 years left before the statue stopped, giving him chakra to sustain himself. But there was one thing on Madara's mind that gave him pause. The Kyuubi attack. The beast was sealed in the boy by the Yondaime Hokage, but why would the fox just randomly attack the village, when it had the chance to escape and be free? By attacking the village it had another chance to be sealed again. Unless someone was controlling it, couldn't have been his enemy, Hashirama, because he was dead, and Zetsu told him he was sealed. So who could it have been? Another Uchiha. Zetsu, yelled Madara hoarsely. In a few minutes, he could see the Venus fly trap that opened up to expose his head. Yes? Asked the black half. Why did Madara call for him the last time he visited? Was when he gave Naruto his new clothes. Find out everything you can about the Kyuubi attack 13 years ago, and see what could have caused it and who was controlling it, commanded Madara. The white half was confused. Why would he care about the Kyuubi attack? But the black half understood fully. I'll check it out, said the black half. He was about to sink and he ground before the white counterpart spoke up. Oh, and here's the papers you wanted, spoke the white cheerfully. It handed Madara the papers and sunk into the ground. Madara examined the papers. Yep, perfect. Naruto, called Madara. Naruto stopped on his 924th push-up and just stared at his sensei curiously. Madara called him over and began to explain chakra natures and affinities. Naruto, you see this in my hand, said Madara. Naruto just stared at the papers. What was so special about them? They were just papers. Pieces of paper. He answered blankly. That was another thing about him that was new after dropping the mask. Naruto was now devoid of emotion, or he just never revealed his emotions, but Madara believed it was the latter. Yes and no. These are chakra papers, spoke Madara, but Naruto didn't seem like he was following on with the same thought. These papers are grown from a tree that is infused and grown from chakra. They are able to tell you what affinity you have to one of the basic elements: fire, water, wind, earth and lightning. Each one has their own strengths and weaknesses and other special relationships with one another. Naruto just nodded now, knowing that they were quite interesting papers. Now, I have little doubt that you have a fire affinity and part to my blood that's running through you, spoke Madara. Wait, sensei? Asked Naruto. Now he had the old man's attention. How do you tell what chakra nature you have with these papers? Madara was getting around to that. He handed Naruto one of the papers and held onto to another. Like this, said Madara. He channeled a small amount of chakra into the paper. What happened first was half of it ignited and turned to ash, and while the second half split in two. You see, Naruto, this paper is sensitive to chakra, and when you channel even the smallest amount, something will occur. Now tell me what happened to my paper. Naruto just recalled what he just saw. First half of your paper ignited and turned to ash, then after that the second half split in two. Exactly, which means I have two affinities. Fire and wind. Naruto just nodded. At least he had a teacher that was skilled in fire jutsu. Now to find out your affinity, 5 things will happen to your paper. If your affinity is fire like mine, your paper will burn. Wind also like mine will cut in half. Water, it will become wet. Earth will crumble into dust, while lightning, it will wrinkle, explained Madara. But my main affinity is fire, since it was the first to appear. Naruto nodded and looked at his paper. He channeled his chakra into it and 3 things happened. First, the paper split in two. The 2 halves that were left, one burned and turned into ash while the other wrinkled up. Madara stared at the paper. 3 chakra natures, that was rare, and they all appeared to be natural too. It seems you have 3 affinities, Naruto: wind, fire and lightning, praised Madara. Cool. So when do we get started on elemental manipulation? Asked Naruto. He was really tired of doing all these exercises. You don't, said Madara. What? Spat Naruto. Why was he even doing all those punishing exercises? But I have the Sharingan, I can just predict my enemy's attacks, stated Naruto. He didn't notice the wrinkly hand coming at him, aimed for his head. A loud slap was heard as Madara's hand came into contact with the back of Naruto's head. Don't question your master, bellowed Madara. The blonde was lying on the floor, clutching the back of his head. This was the first time Naruto was being rebellious in front of Madara, and then he said something stupid. I just did, you old goat. Several tick marks appeared on Madara's face. He didn't mind being called old, but an old goat was something he didn't stand. He gripped his Kusarigama and started whacking Naruto with it multiple times on its blunt end, while Naruto was repeating, "Ow, I'm sorry, ow, ow." Around about this time, Zetsu returned and was treated with a rather amusing sight. Madara was hitting Naruto with the blunt side of his Kusarigama. Although the hits didn't really hurt Naruto, he just wanted to stop being hit by an old man. It was breaking his reputation. The 2 halves chuckled at the scene, since it was rare when Madara would become so active. After a few minutes of discipline by Madara, the old Uchiha sat back down in his throne-like chair. Naruto, there is a limitation to the Sharingan, said Madara, gaining the blonde's attention. Even though we can see all our opponent's movements, doesn't mean we can intercept them all the time. You must train your body to be able to overcome every threat, and the Sharingan will be your tool to further overwhelm your opponent. Because even if you can track their movements, your own body will not be able to keep up with your opponent's, explained Madara. That's why I gave you weight seals, to increase the amount of speed and strength within you attacks, while your other exercises are to increase you stamina. Now Naruto understood. If he only explained that to him in the beginning. You could have just said at the beginning, mumbled Naruto. I wanted you to figure it out, said Madara. But Naruto was surprised by that statement. I want you to be able to figure these things out yourself, for if you are going to deploy the Eye of the Moon plan, then you will face powerful opponents like the cages, clarified Madara. Now get back to your training, or do you want me to hit you again? Said Madara with an evil glint in his eye. Naruto nodded and went back to training. Madara faced Zetsu. That didn't take long, commented the former Uchiha leader. Zetsu just stared impassively at its creator. That's because of what I found was quite interesting. And what did you find? Asked Madara, raising his gray eyebrow at his subordinate. A note from the Yondaime Hokage to the Sandaime saying a person, claiming to be Madara Uchiha, took control of the Kyobi and attacked the village. The village has become quite lazy if it can be infiltrated so easily. But back to the Kyobi attacker, spoke Zetsu. Impossible, I was sitting right here 13 years ago, and even then my body was not like it was. I couldn't be able to extract the Kyobi and then attack the Konohagakure with the blade I have now. Growled Madara. Some Uchiha is impersonating me, a copycat. We need to find this person and kill him. He could be a threat to me and my plans. He could ruin everything. And I did just that, declared Zetsu. Somehow Zetsu always seemed to please him more and more. Whoever had attacked the village has been manipulating the Akatsuki through the guise of Madara Uchiha. Although I couldn't place a name, I have found out that he has ensnared Nagato and has ordered him to collect the Biju to seal in the statue. Madara was in thought at what Zetsu said. Someone was influencing Nagato to carry out the exact same plan he thought of. This person must have been a really good copycat, or he just took pleasure in using a name that he couldn't measure up to. But he was influencing the only other person who could summon the decrepit statue. Madara's pawn. When the time is right, I will have Naruto deal with the impersonator, because I cannot anymore. Although I would love nothing more than to deploy the infinite Tsukuyomi, this person is controlling my pawns, and if it's one thing I hate, is people who meddle in others' affairs. The Eye of the Moon plan was my idea. Only I or my heir Naruto will deploy it. No one else. This Madara aspirer must be eliminated, connived Madara darkly. It's been 2 months since that time when Madara was told about the Kyuubi attack's instigator. He then told Naruto about hoping to have him become even more loyal to him, and it worked like a charm. Naruto became even more devoted and loyal to Madara, saying that he will kill the fake Madara that caused his life to become hell, for he was the epicenter for all the hatred and loneliness Naruto suffered in his life. It was all because of him, but he would soon have the power to kill him with mutual hatred. But there was one thing missing. The fake Madara was responsible for the attack against the village. He may have even had a hand in the Uchiha massacre. Thought Naruto he was resting from his physical training. It was because of him that the village hates me, but also the Yondaime Hokage had a part to play in that. But the fake Madara may have killed my parents. Zetsu, yelled Naruto. If there was anyone that could find out who his parents were, it was the plant man. Zetsu rose up from the ground, only his upper body was visible. Yes, Naruto? Asked Zetsu. This was the first time the blonde asked for something from the colored man. I want you to run a DNA test at the Konoha hospital by infiltrating the village to find out who my parents were, spoke Naruto rather quickly. Zetsu was surprised. He never expected something like that. Okay, but first, I will need some of your blood so I can compare it to anyone in the Leave village, stated Zetsu. An hour later they began a blood extraction. They watched as the red liquid filled up the small container, ready for the test to happen at the hospital. I will be back in a few hours, said the plant thing. It was night in Konoha and all was quiet. Not a single soul was stirring, not even in the hospital. Zetsu morphed from the ground in the middle of the reception area. Black Zetsu being a powerful sensor, so he could sense the signatures of everyone in the hospital, and it felt nothing in the hospital except for its patients. Do you know Naruto hates hospitals? Stated the white version to the black one. Yes, it simply said. Oh, come on, I wanted to surprise you. They made their way to a certain wing in the hospital, where they found many things, including operating machines used for scanning DNA and, among other things. Ooh, this is the place, right? Asked the white. No shit. They took out the necessary hospital equipment needed for the procedure. Zetsu didn't have fingerprints, so it wouldn't leave behind any. Zetsu typed away on the keyboard that operated the computer. It then compared the DNA results between Naruto and his parents, hoping to find any inkling on who they were. The first picture that came up on the screen was a beautiful red-headed woman with violet eyes and a round face. Ooh, she's pretty, said White Zetsu. This is Naruto's mother. Her name is Kushina Uzumaki, birth date July 10th, blood type B, Jonin, status deceased, stated Black Zetsu. Oh, poor Naruto. Time for the father, quick, quick, said White Zetsu with glee. The second picture that appeared was a handsome, spiky blonde-haired man with blue eyes. White Zetsu was shocked. The Yondaime Hokage was Naruto's father. Now it made sense to the artificial human. Of course Yondaime would seal the Kyuubi within his son. How come they didn't see it before? Minato Namikaze, birthday, January 25th, blood type B, age, status, deceased. Spoke Black Zetsu. Now this is a surprising turn of events. Who should we tell first, Naruto or Madara? Let's tell them both. Spoke Black Zetsu. Who can't wait for Naruto's reaction? Said White Zetsu. The fly trap man morphed into the ground not before ridding any evidence that it was their butt. Wait. Said White Zetsu. There's more. Zetsu eyed this new information that appeared on the computer screen. It was tracing other relatives, but since Naruto's parents didn't have any siblings, it instantly went through grandparents and great-grandparents. What do we have here? Stated the black half. The sun was shining brightly over the Kanahagakure, the birds were singing, the rivers were flowing, the leaves were dancing in the wind, and two freaks, wearing green jumpsuits, were shouting about the power of youth. It was one of the now rare few times the sun actually shined, but it still lacked the warmth that came with it. Sakura Haruno was on her way to the Yamanaka flower ship. The village seemed happy, happier than it has ever been. But Sakura, she was just normal. In fact, she wasn't even overjoyed that she was apprenticed to Tsunade. She didn't know why, but hopefully she may find the answer to the question, in time of course. The flower shop was now in sight, and she could see her best friend Ino Yamanaka behind the checkout, examining her nails for the 17th time that day. Sakura sighed at the image. Some people never change. Ino used to do that when they were younger, all the time. She opened the Yamanaka flower shop door and heard a ring of the doorbell. Ino was broken out of her stupor when her best friend walked in. "Hey Sakura," greeted the platinum blonde. "Hey Ino," greeted Sakura back. "So I heard the news," said Ino, trying to start up a conversation with the pinkette. "What news?" asked Sakura. "Oh, you know. There's been word that a certain pink-haired genin became the apprentice to the Godame Hokage, Tsunade Senju," spoke Ino in an informative tone. "But those have to be rumors, since they never said anything about your massive forehead in it." "What you say, Ino pig?" screeched Sakura, flames of feminine fury flickering off her form. "You heard what I said, billboard brow," said Ino, grinding her teeth together. Their noses were inches apart, and they looked like they were about to tear each other, a new one. Until Kiba walked through the door. "Hey Sakura, hey Ino," said Kiba with a happy grin on his face, totally unaware of the raging behemoths in front of him. "Get the fuck out, Kiba." They both yelled at the same time as they threw bouquets of flowers at him, which somehow against the laws of physics propelled him out onto the street, a trail of blood flying off his lip, and his eyes were wide and white. Kiba felt like a mountain had just hit him while being kicked in the gut by a donkey. Today just wasn't his day. At the same time, Shikamaru walked around the corner and saw Kiba unconscious on the ground, sporting a large bump on his head and a trail of blood at the corner of his lip, and possibly some cracked ribs. When Shikamaru looked to his right, he saw Ino and Sakura arguing, more like screaming like raging banshees and calling each other names. "Troublesome," muttered Shikamaru as he stepped over Kiba and continued on his path. Whoever had the thought that women were sensitive creatures by nature must have been stupid at the time. I mean, seriously, this is why I don't get my mom mad. She's dangerous enough as it is. But back to Sakura and Ino. "You are so lucky, Sakura. I mean, being apprenticed to the Tsunade of the Sannin, do you know how many women would kill or maim for that position?" commented Ino. "I know, but I'm not doing this for myself or anybody else," pronounced Sakura. Ino was taken back at what Sakura said. Then why is she doing it? "But if not for anybody or yourself, then why?" inquired Ino. Sakura looked down at the ground. Ino got the message that it was incredibly painful to talk about and taboo around her. "I'm doing it because of a promise I made," said Sakura sadly, deciding to drop the topic. For now, Ino instead asked a different question involving her best friend. "Okay, Sakura, what kind of flowers would you like today? Can I get some white roses? Please, Ino?" asked Sakura in a sincere voice. "White rose is great, the symbol of passion, remembrance, happiness and love. You chose well, forehead," said Ino as she tied a bouquet of white roses together. "So who's the lucky guy that's got your eye?" asked Ino, knowing this would be good gossip. "They're for Naruto," said Sakura quietly. Ino gasped a little loudly. She knew she had just treaded on unwanted ground. And with that, Sakura left the shop with Ino watching her retreating form. Ino was in the same boat as Sakura. Even though she wasn't close with Naruto, she still regretted all the time she'd make fun of him and punch him. If only she could take them back and tell him how sorry she was. She felt guilty over the fact that she was a bully towards him and her mother encouraged her to bully him, while her father disapproved of it, knowing something she didn't. The walk to the cemetery was quiet and quick. Sakura was on autopilot, her mind preoccupied with everything she wanted to do with her former blonde teammate, but now that would never happen. When she reached the cemetery, she walked over to the Naruto's headstone, but she wasn't the only one that was there. Hinata was standing there as well. Everyone in their academy days could see that Hinata liked Naruto, and somehow Naruto was so dense that he never noticed. Sakura walked up to the tombstone and laid the white roses in front of it. Hinata didn't seem to acknowledge her presence. When Hinata had heard that Naruto died, she didn't cry, she didn't vent her frustrations, she didn't blame anyone, she just became detached from everyone. A few minutes of silence. Hinata left the cemetery, maybe to give Sakura some alone time, or just because she wanted to. Deciding that now that they were perfectly alone, Sakura said what was on her mind. "Hey Naruto-kun." She started off. "I came to visit again, and I brought flowers. Ino says hello." She smiled, thinking of the memories she had with the blonde. "I went to Tsunade-sama today and I asked if she could take me on as her student. And she said yes. I'm going to mainly be training in medical ninjutsu and possibly Tsunade-sama's incredible strength. I want you to know that. I'll visit once every week if I can, so we can just talk, you know." She giggled for a second. "I really miss you. I miss your smile, that atrocious jumpsuit you always wore. I miss your competitive rivalry with Sasuke. I miss that loud voice of yours." She smiled as she lifted off some of the qualities Naruto had. "Just so you know, I'm sorry how I treated you. I never really bothered to get to know you, though now I wish I had." She was looking for more words to say, but she was running out of words to say. "I'll come by again next week, okay? Bye Naruto," she said. She turned and left the cemetery slowly, but not before sparing a glance at the headstone with a melancholic look. But she didn't notice Kakashi standing a bit away. He watched everything, and now he had even more regrets. He felt like it was because of him that Naruto won't be living life with someone that loved him. He also possibly stopped a future life, ever growing in the future. And if he could rank his regrets, Naruto's death was one of Kakashi's greatest. He walked up to the headstone and just stared at it impassively, no thoughts running through his head. He was standing there for hours on end, unflinching and silent, not even thinking except for the memories of his time with his sensei's son. Believing he had spent enough time at the cemetery, he walked away saying a silent prayer for his student. Until he was shaken from his thoughts by a loud voice. "Kakashi, my eternal rival, today we must bathe in the springtime of your youth," roared an enthusiastic voice. It seems he was going to do another of Guy's challenges today. His shoulders slumped in depression. He was going to be hounded by Guy until he did one of his challenges. Again. Tsunade was sitting behind her desk doing the bane of all cages. Paperwork. She opened her drawer and took out a bottle of sake that she got for herself. Even though she would get a tongue lashing from Shizune for drinking on the job, it didn't matter since she wanted alcohol and it was her favorite pastime. Besides, she could handle Shizune and her wicked tongue anytime. She took a swig of the alcohol and bent back in her chair, enjoying the position and the taste of the liquid in her mouth. There was nothing that could break the peace and quiet she was having now. Everyone's emotional wounds seemed to have healed after her favorite blonde's passing, but there was still some that were bleeding. She took another swig when suddenly one of her Anbu agents appeared kneeling in front of her, causing her to spit out her drink. "Hokage-sama, there was a breach in security of the village less than 24 hours ago," informed the Anbu. "What?" she yelled, and she regained her composure shortly after that. "How did this happen?" she demanded. "Less than half an hour ago, a Chunin stationed at the hospital searched over the video recordings last night, and he found the intruder on the video strolling through the hospital. This person was wearing a black cloak emblazoned with red clouds," continued the Anbu agent. "Akatsuki. But what would they want with the hospital?" she thought. "Bird, was there anything else that the camera feeds picked up?" The Anbu agent, now identified as Bird, nodded. After the Chunin reported the disturbance to the Anbu, a team was sent over to study what was found, but what we found should only be for your eyes only, Hokage-sama," said Bird. Tsunade thought over what she would need to do. "Get me Shizune, Shikaku, Kakashi and Drea, knowing the pervert he could be at the hot springs," ordered Tsunade. "At once," said Bird as he disappeared in a whirlwind of leaves. Tsunade got up behind her desk and started walking to the hospital. When she arrived, there was already a team of Anbu members waiting for her. They bowed in respect and took her to the security room where all the tapes at the hospital were made. When she entered the room, Shizune was already waiting for her, with her master's pet pig Tauntaun in her arms, along with Shikaku Nara, who gave her a nod. Though she expected Kakashi to be late, but Drea wasn't here, until the door opened behind her and trotted in Drea with a serious expression carved into his visage. "Okay, Heim, what was so important that it had to interrupt my research?" asked Drea, a little peeved at the situation. Tsunade gained a tick mark on her forehead at the pervert's words. Even after Naruto's death, he was still focused on writing those perverted trash. The village had been infiltrated during the night. "We're soon going to look at the footage, but I want Kakashi here for this," said Tsunade as her annoyance over the Toad Sennin faded. Drea, Shizune and Shikaku were surprised and worried. Konohagakure was one of the most difficult places to sneak into. It was just as hard to get into like Amigakure and their security. You needed to be a master of stealth, just to get past the sensory barrier that surrounded Konoha, but to freely walk in with a black cloak with red clouds on it without drawing attention to yourself was near impossible. When Itachi Uchiha and Kasami Hoshigaki entered the village looking for Naruto, that was different. Itachi was a former Konoha Anbu captain, so of course he knew of the villages, defenses and the way to get around them, and Kasami had assassinated other countries' daimyos and gotten away, so he at least was an expert at stealth. An hour passed and yet Kakashi had yet to arrive. Tsunade gained a tick mark at his tardiness. Another hour passed and Tsunade had gotten another tick mark at Kakashi being 2 hours late. By the time of the third hour had passed, Tsunade now had 3 tick marks on her face, which was throbbing wildly, and boy was she pissed. The door opened to reveal Kakashi reading that stupid orange smut he read. He greeted the 3 others in the room with a casual yo and I smile, but instead of a hello back he got a punch in the face by Tsunade. Lucky for him it wasn't chakra infused. Kakashi got up off the floor and dusted himself off, but was still surprised that Tsunade just attacked high out of the blue. "Now that we are all here, let's get Kakashi up to speed," said Drea, trying to defuse the situation since things have been tense between the two Sannin and Kakashi. Drea cleared his throat and spoke to Kakashi, since it was better if he did it and not Tsunade. Over the night the Leaf village was infiltrated by an unknown assailant. Who they are and how they got in still remains a mystery, as they penetrated through the sensory barrier with relative ease. However, they weren't really careful when they arrived here at the hospital where we caught them on the building's video surveillance, but what we do know is that the assailant was wearing a black cloak with red clouds. They now had Kakashi's full attention. If it was anything concerning the Akatsuki, it wasn't good. Shizune tapped a few buttons on the keyboard, activated the monitor and selected the recorded tape. When the image came to life, the first thing they saw was the reception area. Then what looked like a Venus flytrap-like thing started morphing from the ground and then became a full body, and as clear as day, they could see the black cloak with the red clouds. "The Chunin was right, it is the Akatsuki," said Shizune, and Tauntaun oinked worriedly. "But what could the Akatsuki want with this hospital? There's nothing special about it," spoke Shizune, getting an oink of agreement from Tauntaun. "But they already accessed the village when they were looking for Naruto, but those were Itachi and that other ninja Kasami. Why would another Akatsuki agent come here again? And there's something not right here," stated Shikaku. All eyes were on him, even the pigs. "From what the information tells us that Drea-sama was able to conjure up is that the Akatsuki work in pairs, so where's his partner?" said Shikaku as he gestured toward Zetsu on the screen. "This is starting to get more confusing by the second. None of this information gives us something to go on." "But Shizune's right, why the hospital?" said Tsunade as she rubbed her temple. "Maybe it's not the hospital that interests them," spoke Kakashi, getting everyone's attention. He was about to speak again before a new voice made itself known. "Maybe it has nothing to do with the hospital at all, or whatever they need to do is within the building." Everyone in the room turned their attention toward the door when after a second scowl started sprouting. Before the doorway was an old man with black spiky hair, covered in bandages mainly in areas such as his right eye and right arm, leaning on a cane. "Danzo," growled Drea. The darkness of the shinobi was standing before everyone, his impassive face unreadable. Along with him were the Hokage's 2 other advisors, Homura Mitakato and Kaharu Utatane. "What are you doing here?" asked Shikaku. Anyone could see that his body was tense, but it was always tense around Danzo. "We received a message that the village had been infiltrated by an agent of the Akatsuki," stated Homura. "Is this true, Tsunade?" asked Kaharu. "Yes," answered Tsunade, her unease and annoyance just rippling off her. "Then you have also yet made another lapse of judgment on the security of Konoha," spoke Danzo. The scowls just got a whole lot bigger. First, the Sharingan abandons the village, and not a day after we lose our weapon, the Jinchuriki and now a wanted group of missing ninja are now able to waltz freely from within and out our village. Those circumstances were not her fault, defended Shikaku. It was the Aka's own choice to leave the village, and it was his choice to kill Naruto, and we have no idea about the capabilities of the rest of the Akatsuki. Danzo didn't seem fazed, but he knew this was not a battle he could win at the moment. All the 7 people in the room turned their attention back to the screen where the plant thing opened up to reveal a man, one half completely black, and the other white with green hair. Peculiar, said Homura. This person's appearance was strange to say the least. But being half-colored was not the weirdest to Homura, it was the fly-trap-like appendage. They watched as the black and white man walked through the hospital to a certain wing. When he arrived, Shizune and Tsunade instantly recognized it as the room where all the blood tests and all other things concerning blood is performed. Then the plant thing took out a small vial of red liquid and scanned its contents into the monitor. And what appeared next made everyone freeze. It was a picture of Kushina Uzumaki, the red-hot-blooded habanero. They were unable to hear anything the person was saying because the video doesn't record sound. They paused the monitor again and decided to have a chat. Why would the Akatsuki be interested in Kushina? She's dead, inquired Drea. Maybe it had to be the fact that she was the former Jinchuriki of the Kyobi, answered Shikaku. Shikaku was later given knowledge of this as the village's head Jonin, and Tsunade also knew, of course, being the Hokage, and she also informed Drea and Shizune. No, it's something else, but what? Said Tsunade as she bit her finger. They continued to play the tape where they saw something else that shocked them. An image of Minato Namikaze appeared on the screen. Okay, that's it, I give up. What do the Akatsuki want with dead people? Yelled Tsunade. The pieces of the puzzle were not fitting together, none of this made any sense. Tsunade studied the image of her predecessor, Andrea's former student. It was amazing how no one figured out that Naruto was Minato's son. I mean, come on, the kid was a younger clone of the man. That's it, Naruto. Jiraiya, Kakashi, do you think this has some connection to Naruto? Asked Tsunade. No, nothing comes to mind. Naruto is dead. I don't see why the Akatsuki are interested with him now since the Kyobi's chakra has dispersed, responded Kakashi. Same here, Haim, but I don't see why the Akatsuki would care about Naruto's parentage. They wouldn't care if he was Kami's kid. This doesn't make any sense, said Drea as he rubbed his hand through his hair. They watched the rest of the recording and they were back to square one. In fact, watching the video, it just made things even more confusing. Questions needed to be answered, but the only people who had the answers were the Akatsuki. With confusing thoughts in their minds, all the occupants in the room left, except Drea, who kept staring at the monitor in front of him. Why Minato and Kushina? What do they have to do with anything the Akatsuki planned? At Myobakuzen, the Great Toad Sage was pondering whether to tell Drea that Naruto is still alive. He had argued with himself for hours whether or not to tell him. But in his prophecy, he said that either a great savior or destroyer would come about in the world, but it was not his place to decide such things. In the end, he decided to withhold the information from Drea until it was truly necessary. He would just observing all creation, watching as nature takes its course. But he would tell Drea of the new news he had received. Something which would ultimately decide the course the world will take. Hey, you old geezer, wake up! Yelled Shima, a toad sage of Myokazen. Ma. You shouldn't call the Honorable Sage such a disrespectful title, berated Fukasaku, another sage of the Maze Mountain. Shut up, you old fart. We've been sitting here for hours and now dinner is all cold. It's not easy being a housewife, you know, yelled Shima. Stop calling me an old fart, you dusty bag. And who cares about dinner? Bit back Fukasaku. I care, since I'm the one doing the cooking. Both old toads started arguing, gaining the Honorable Sage's attention. Now spouses shouldn't fight, said the elder. The two small toads looked back at the elder, waiting for what he was going to say. Please summon Drea here as soon as you can, there is something I must tell him. The two toads were astonished. The old toad wanted to speak to Drea again. Fukasaku then did the appropriate hand signs for a reverse summoning. Jaku Kachiyos no Jutsu, yelled Fukasaku as he slammed his hand down on the ground where multiple symbols appeared on the ground. Smoke appeared and it revealed the form of Drea. The Sannin was flabbergasted. He never expected to be back at Myobakuzen. Fukasaku-sama, asked Drea. Drea-chan, the Great Lord Elder wishes to speak with you, said Fukasaku. Drea turned and faced the Great Elder. Will you hurry up? I wanted to have dinner, shouted Shima. Her annoyance was very well known at this point. Ah, now that we are here. Who are you again? Said the elder. Everyone seemed to deflate at this. Drea. Drea. Yelled Shima. She wanted to get this over with and go and make dinner. Ah yes. Drea. I have summoned you here because I have had another vision. Another prophecy. Said the sage. What was in your vision? Asked Drea. If another vision had been made, it was either good or bad. In my dream, I saw a great beast, a foul creature. It created countries, swallowed oceans, split the land, carried mountains, and with its breath spawned hurricanes. And its mere presence alone will immerse the world in terror. And yet this creature is a part of nature, and nature is a part of it. Spoke the sage. Drea was scared. This beast didn't sound all that nice to him. This beast will come to our world soon, and with it probably our destruction. It is the harbinger of the end days. When you hear its howl, you will know that it has come. Spoke the elder sage. This seemed to depress everyone else in the room. That was not a good way to start a prophecy. However, there was someone else in my dream. Continued the elder sage. Who? Asked Drea carefully. He needed to find this person and possibly save the world. I cannot say. This being was clouded from me. Answered the sage. But this person was forged from darkness and fire, bears the scars of the winds of war and the tides of sorrow hammer against him. He carries the hatred of 1,000 men, and the love of none. He holds up the pillars of the earth, and his power sparks hope and fear in the world. He will rise and subjugate the beast. Drea gained some relief of who the sage described. But that one word seemed to awaken something in Drea. When he does enslave the beast, he will either bring salvation or despair, depending on which path he takes. Spoke the sage. It opened its eyes and examined Drea. To unearth this person, you must stare into the eyes of the abyss and shadows. And it will find you. Is that it? Asked Drea. Yes, that is it. Spoke the sage. But Drea. This person may be an even greater threat than the beast. With those words, Drea was sent back to where he was summoned. Drea found himself in the Hokage's office. His sudden reappearance startled Tsunade. Drea, what happened? Where did you go? Shouted Tsunade. Drea cowered under the glare. He then started to tell her everything the sage told him about the great beast and the person of fire. A great beast that swallows oceans and a man that bears the scars of the winds of war. Tsunade was baffled. Drea, do you think this beast is the Kyuubi? Asked Tsunade. No, I don't think so, Haim. I believe that this beast is even a greater threat than the Kyuubi. Answered Drea. And what of this mysterious person? The one with eyes like the abyss. Said Tsunade. I don't know, Haim, this is all that I was given. I'm just as perplexed as you are. Said Drea. But there was something that the elder warned me about. Said Drea, gaining Tsunade's attention. He said that this person may be an even greater threat than the beast. Spoke Drea with a grim voice. They both sat in the room while silence reigned over them. At dark, the dark hovel with Madara and Naruto. Madara was having a nap, since he's old. Naruto was resting, sleeping soundly. Until Madara got up and whacked him over his head with the blunt side of his kusarigama. Ow. What was that for? Yelled/asked Naruto. We are now going to begin the first part of your true training, Naruto. We are going to begin elemental manipulation. Explained Madara. This got Naruto excited because he was fed up with all the physical exercises. I believe that your physical body had adjusted well to all the exercises. Naruto got up and took off his black vest, and he was right. Naruto was now well built. He wasn't overly muscular, and yet he wasn't skinny as a twig, and he was lean and fit, a perfect combination. Then Madara finally took notice of the necklace around Naruto's neck. It had a green crystal in the middle with 2 accessories on either side. Madara had seen that necklace before. Naruto, said Madara. Naruto turned to his sensei after putting his black vest back on. Where did you get that necklace? Asked Madara. Naruto looked down and saw the necklace hanging by his neck. I won it in a bet, from the old woman, who hides behind a genjutsu to make herself look young. Answered Naruto. Tell me. I wish to know. Did that necklace belong to the first Hokage? Inquired Madara. Yeah, it did. Answered Naruto confusedly. Madara didn't respond, but he was thinking of something that could work. Doesn't matter. Naruto, since we have discovered that you have 3 chakra natures, all of which are natural, we are going to start with the one I am most familiar with. Fire release. The ancient Uchiha tapped his cane scythe and out came some random white Zetsu. The white Zetsu kneeled in front of Madara like a loyal dog that obeyed any order. The old Uchiha lifted his Kusarigama and channeled chakra into it and decapitated the head of the white Zetsu, and then it turned into a tree. These Zetsus are basically clones made of the first Hokage's DNA. I channeled my Yang chakra through my scythe and used the Hien no Jutsu, Flying Swallow Jutsu, simultaneously. That's why this dead Zetsu turned into a tree when it came in contact with my Yang chakra. I don't understand, said Naruto. But Madara expected this. I will explain. There are 2 types of chakra in this world that people can utilize. Yin chakra and Yang chakra, said Madara. Yin chakra is making imagination into reality and is the spiritual energy that is talked about, while Yang chakra is breathing life into form and it is the physical energy. I see, so when you killed the clone, you breathed life into it, then it became a tree, said Naruto. Exactly, my young apprentice. But let's get back to the original reason why I killed this Zetsu. Madara plucked a leaf from one of its branches and held it between his fingers. In order to strengthen your fire jutsus, you must be able to take fire manipulation to the highest level. In order to do this, you must be able to convert a certain amount of chakra into fire and burn this leaf fully. Madara then plucked 2 more leaves. For wind and lightning you must do the same, however, each element has different personalities, you could say, for usually our chakra nature is taken right out of our general personalities. So what is the personalities of fire, wind and lightning? Asked Naruto. For fire, imagine your chakra as a ball, then compress the ball and release all that energy at once. Although I don't have lightning nature, I can still teach it to you. For lightning, imagine your chakra as fast streaks arcing about at irregular intervals. And for wind, cut your chakra in 2 and then grind them together like sharpening a blade. You're quite lucky, Naruto. Why? Asked Naruto. The 3 natures we have talked about happen to be the most offensive and combative elements of the 5 basic natures, explained Madara. He coughed a little after the sentence. Zetsu calls them the triple threat. But won't I need to learn any defensive jutsus? Questioned Naruto. That's why we have the Susanoo, clarified Madara. Susanoo, said Naruto. It's when you use both Amaterasu and the Tsukuyomi at the same time, creating the perfect defense, spoke Madara. Now start you fire manipulation training. Or do you require some more discipline? Naruto nodded and he was about to start training when Zetsu appeared between the 2. Zetsu, said Madara curiously. Hello. This is great, you 2 aren't taking your nap, so now we can tell each other what we have discovered, said White Zetsu happily. Spit it out already, snapped Madara angrily. While Naruto's thoughts on his master was, is this guy bipolar? What we have discovered is quite entertaining, said Zetsu. Zetsu took out 2 folders from within his robe and handed one to Naruto. Naruto opened the folder to see a beautiful red-haired woman with amazing violet eyes. Who is she? Asked Naruto. This woman was amazingly beautiful. That is your mother, Kushina Uzumaki, said Zetsu. Naruto gasped and his eyes widened. Now that he looked at the folder, he could see some resemblance between them, such as the shape of their faces and the shape of their eyes. There's more. Once we infiltrated the hospital, I allowed myself to be viewed by the security surveillance, where later the Hokage and several high-ranking shinobi went to watch the tape. And I discovered something. This gained Naruto's attention. It turns out that your mother was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi before you. That seems to explain a lot of things, said Madara now that he thought about it. Maybe when your mother was carrying you within her womb, you subconsciously absorbed or inherited some of the Kyuubi's chakra, resulting in those whisker marks, continued Madara. This could present ourselves with an opportunity to fuel the Geto Mazo with the Kyuubi's chakra, yet it could cause you to lose your startling recuperative powers and other powers you inherited. Naruto was absorbing everything. His mother was the container of the Kyuubi before him, and they now had the chance to further the Eye of the Moon plan, but at the cost of all the powers the Kyuubi gave him. And from what the folder said, his mother was dead. Yes, but that is not the most surprising thing, spoke Zetsu, cutting everyone off from their thoughts. It's who your father is that's the most surprising. Zetsu then handed Naruto the other folder he had. Naruto took the folder and opened it up, where he received the shock of his life. There right in the folder was a picture of the Yondaime Hokage, Minato Namikaze. "Is this my?" said Naruto with a cold tone of voice. "Yes," answered Zetsu. Naruto stared at the picture of his father. So many feelings running through him, but mainly anger, rage, animosity and hatred. Madara was watching his student carefully. He then turned his gaze upon four more folders within the plant man's hands. Back to Naruto. Without even knowing, Naruto channeled chakra to his right eye where the pattern of his Mangekyo took shape. His three-pointed side pattern appeared in his eyes. Whenever Madara saw those eyes, the air would become denser and the light would become darker. His left eye started to bleed as he performed the first of his Mangekyo's abilities. "Amaterasu," whispered Naruto. Instantly the folder of his father was set ablaze by the black flames, being reduced to ashes in seconds. Naruto was angry. His rage was consuming him. His own father was the one that condemned him to a life of misery and loneliness, and the Sandaime Hokage said that he didn't know who his parents were, that he found him in a forest, but he lied right to his face. He knew all along. Drea he knew, of course he knew, Kakashi as well he must have known, and Tsunade, she was in on the loop too. He should have seen it sooner. All the attention that Drea and Sarutobi gave him, they wouldn't care about some random orphan, they would care about the son of the Yondaime and the Kyuubi container. They all knew. The Sandaime, Drea, Kakashi, Tsunade. They all knew, but they kept it from me. They kept the identity of the people most important to me," thought Naruto. Then he screamed at the top of his lungs, letting out all his anguish, and yet he unconsciously activated both Mangekyo. A white skeletal rib cage started to form around him, protecting him like armor. Then four white skeletal arms grew tied together by bolts, and finally came the head of Naruto's Susanoo. Naruto's Susanoo was completely white in color. It had four skeletal arms, and its rib cage had four horizontal, curved spikes on each rib. Its skull had four glowing yellow eyes and two forward-facing bull horns along with sharp fang-like teeth. After Naruto had stopped screaming, he examined his Susanoo. And he was impressed. Before he looked at Madara, his teacher. "I am the curse of hatred," said Naruto grimly and with a dark look in his eye, which was only enhanced by the Susanoo surrounding him. Then his Susanoo roared as well, howling like a wolf. Madara just smirked. He now had the blonde's full loyalty and devotion, and his Susanoo was rather impressive as well. "Zetsu," commanded Madara, still with that unrestrained smirk. Zetsu jumped a little at Madara's tone. "Get ready to transplant my eyes," ordered Madara. Yes/yes. Both have said at the same time. "I leave my legacy to you, Naruto, and when the time is right I will repay you for your aid. Someday," thought Madara. End of chapter 2.